If you're serious about long-term survival, you should be thinking about bees. Not just for honey. For pollination. For food resilience. And in the right situation. Even for trade. But a lot of folks look at beekeeping and think it's complicated, fragile, or too easy to mess up. Truth is, bees are tougher than people give them credit for. You just have to understand what they actually need. And more importantly, what they don't. A healthy hive quietly solves several survival problems at once. You get honey, which stores extremely well. It lasts indefinitely when kept properly. Wax, which has dozens of practical uses, from simple fire starters to basic waterproofing and candle making. And maybe most important, pollination for any food crops you're trying to grow. In a grid-down world, that last one matters more than most people realize. No pollinators means smaller harvests. Sometimes a lot smaller. And unlike many pieces of survival gear, a working hive can keep producing year after year with relatively low ongoing input. I know what some of you are thinking. Bees sound like a high-maintenance headache. But most of the time, a well-established hive mostly wants to be left alone. They're not looking for constant interference. They're looking for three simple things: water, space, and stability. If you can consistently provide those three things, you're already ahead of where most beginners start. Water is the one people forget most. Bees use water to regulate hive temperature and to help process food inside the colony. If they can't find a reliable water source nearby, they will go looking for one. And sometimes that means livestock tanks, mud puddles, or places closer to your living area than you might prefer. A shallow, consistent water source near the hive solves a lot of problems before they start. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be dependable. The next thing to understand is bee temperament. Most honeybees are not naturally aggressive when they're left undisturbed, but they are extremely defensive of the hive. That means your job as a beekeeper is mostly about being calm, predictable, and not bothering them more than necessary. Slow movements help. Consistent routines help. And learning to read the general mood of the colony goes a long way over time. New keepers sometimes make the mistake of opening the hive every few days just to check on things. That usually creates more stress than benefit. Bees do best with steady conditions and minimal disruption. You also don't need a warehouse full of equipment to get started. At minimum, most beginners work with a protective veil, or suit, a smoker, and a hive tool. The protective gear gives you confidence while you're still learning. The smoker helps calm the colony during inspections by interrupting their alarm response. And the hive tool, well, that thing earns its keep pretty quickly. Frames stick. Boxes glue themselves together with propolis. You'll reach for that tool more than you expect. You can expand your setup later if you want to, but those basics will take you a long way. Now let's talk about getting your first bees. Most beginners either purchase a package or nucleus colony from a reputable supplier, or they try to catch a swarm. Buying bees is more predictable, and usually the fastest way to get established. Swarm catching can work, and it's very satisfying when it does, but results vary. Some keepers use lemongrass oil in a bait hive to attract scout bees looking for a new home. If you're brand new, starting with purchased bees is perfectly fine. You can experiment with swarm catching later. Where you place the hive matters more than people think. You generally want good morning sun, some wind protection, and a relatively dry area that doesn't stay soggy after rain. A little elevation off the ground helps too. You don't need perfection. You just need reasonable conditions and consistency. Bees are adaptable, but they do appreciate a good start. Now let's clear up one of the biggest beginner misunderstandings. The honey in that hive is not all yours. The colony depends on those stores to survive the cold months. This is where honey supers come in. Think of supers as the colony's surplus pantry. When conditions are good, bees store extra honey in those upper boxes. That's typically what beekeepers harvest. But if you take too much, you can put the entire colony at risk going into winter. A good rule of thumb is simple. Leave your bees enough to survive the cold season in your region. They worked hard for it. You'll also want to keep an eye on potential hive threats. Depending on where you live, that can include mice looking for winter shelter, ants trying to move in, small hive beetles, even curious larger animals. Most of this is manageable with basic hive placement and simple preventative steps. You don't need to obsess over it. Just stay aware and check in periodically. And I'll tell you this from experience. Winter is where many new beekeepers learn their hardest lessons. I lost one of my early hives during a long cold stretch. Everything looked fine going into winter, but that colony never recovered. It happens, even when you're doing your best. Overwintering success is one of the biggest milestones in beekeeping. Proper food stores, good ventilation, and protection from prolonged cold make a huge difference. In the next several field notes, we'll dig deeper into the details of beekeeping. Here's the part most beginners don't hear enough. Once you get past the early learning curve, beekeeping becomes surprisingly calm, even relaxing. There's something about standing near a healthy hive on a warm day. Just listening to that steady hum. That tends to change how people see the whole process. It's not instant, but it is worth it. Until next time, packmates, keep your shit together and trust your instincts.